Compartment for two, promise for one. Railways don't sleep, they purr. When a luxury train threads itself across the dark between cities, it changes languages. Passengers murmur in silk and clink of ice. Steel speaks in amperage and brake pressure. In the service corridor, an oven exhales at a practice degree, the espresso group head hisses like a conspirator, and the carriage intercom clears its throat before daring to ask for anyone at all. My office is a narrow desk in the service car, an iPad tied to a nervous system of sensors, and a radio that treats my name like a polite emergency. I'm the train manager for the Aurelia, a sleeper that sells the nation back to itself one window at a time. On my screen, every suite door tells me who touched it last. Every minibar announces a new lack. The dining car oven admits to moods. The bogies sigh their way across points like tired animals who still love running. The data and I are on first-name terms. I can tell when the brake hold feels pensive, when the chef is flirting with the scallops, and when a guest presses the call button while not believing they deserve anything. My wife, then, was Ivy. She calls herself a journey designer because calling it magic would be vulgar. She arranges light and scent so that strangers think they're walking into a memory they forgot to make. She knows how to pace a corridor so a heartbeat steadies itself, and how to perfume linen so that the word home sneaks up on you. We married on a Wednesday because we liked stealing nice things from the middle of the week. City Hall, the clerk with the lunch break, a white blazer with pockets deep enough to hide the weather. We split a canned espresso on the steps and kissed around the aluminum rim, and I told her I loved her confidence with doors. We rented a small flat above a bakery that started working whenever insomnia did. On my early returns, there would be flour on the landing and a warm conspiracy in the stairwell. Ivy would sit on the counter in one of my shirts with a pencil tucked into her bun, argue with me about diffusers versus fresh flowers, then pull me closer by my belt like she decided we were done arguing. The nook just to the side of her throat became my true north. I'd set my mouth there and breathe a yes into her skin until her storms changed jobs. She liked to leave a calf over my hip when she fell asleep, possession disguised as laziness. I loved the Aurelia because it taught order and mercy at the same time. A bell rang, someone needed water. Wheels sang, physics agreed to be beautiful. A guest cried softly at a window because a river refused to choose a bank. I kept a ring of keys heavy enough to change my walk and made a religion out of small favors. An extra blanket with the weight of a promise. A decanter refilled before missing could be missed. A call button answered with "of course" instead of "how can I help?" The train and I were good at each other. The odd thing was tiny. On the manifest, Suite B7, a top-tier compartment with faucets that believed in their own reflection, had been empty for 2 runs, broken shower diverter awaiting a part. My system logged a discrete blip, bypass on B7's door. 2 seconds, compliant again. The minibar registered a lift and settle of a crystal stopper, not removed, just considered. The camera over the curve of the observation lounge didn't show faces. Privacy isn't a suggestion here. But in the reflection of the piano's lacquer, a smudge moved where there ought to have been nothing. I told myself what men in uniforms tell themselves when control is religion. A steward checking stock, a cleaner murmuring to a latch. I set a quiet flag anyway. The train writes you little notes if you earn it. 2 runs later, the bypass blinked again. Same suite, same whisper of minibar mischief. The galley oven dropped 1 stubborn degree as if someone opened and shut it too gently for scoldings. The vibration sensor under the corridor carpet recorded a signature we call heels with intention. The line didn't shout, it purred. I took a small jar from engineering, a breath-thin UV powder that knows how to keep its mouth shut, and tapped a fingertip under B7's latch, a trace along the polished lip of the minibar shelf, the back of the privacy drape rail where no one touches unless they're discovering the difference between bold and rude. I dusted the call button too, not on the face guests press, but on the underside where stealthier hands go when they're apologizing to themselves while doing it anyway. Then I put the jar away like a gentleman and went back to watching my monitors make their soft weather. The Aurelia moved like a decided thought. Silver on black, lights pooled over table linen, a hush that fell in the hallway when a door sighed shut. I spent the first hour sorting a linen emergency, wrong hem on the napkins, a tragedy with solutions, the second tracking a kitchen tantrum to a thermostat, and the third telling a pair of honeymooners that sleeping to the rhythm of wheels counts as a kind of vow. When I swept through the lounge, I caught a perfume that wasn't ours, amber with a sharp clove that turned its face at the last second. Not Ivy's blend, but related enough that my ribs wanted to vote. Ivy materialized after turndown, straddling a stool at the service counter, balancing a plate on her thigh. Chef says if anyone asks what the scallops smell like, the correct answer is decency, she murmured, fed me one. Her lipstick was the correct shade for undoing decisions. Your rails sound smug, she said. She knows trains, she listens with the underside of her skin. B7 is flirtatious, I said too casually. She paused. The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile, not quite a defense. If you've loved someone long enough, you know gravity has tells. I slid my palm to the side of her throat, never pressing, just greeting. She softened, storms to drizzle. Have the modern conversation, she said. Define modern, I managed, even though my body had already guessed. Open, she said, and set the word between us without clinic or performance. Not chaos, not cheating, rules, no one from your crew, no one writing me checks. We tell first, we keep each other first. Condoms are sacraments. Our bed is a nation with borders. The Aurelia is a sanctuary. You wrote the treaty already, I said, without accusation. I'm asking you to join it, she said. Her thumb found the tendon in my wrist that forgives most things. I could lie, or we could be brave. We drew the lines on butcher paper in the galley because all good plans catch grease. We signed by kissing with less hunger than respect, which felt adult and terrible. It held for one run. Then my powder sang back. Under the UV light, B7's latch glowed like a secret practicing. The crescent on the minibar lip was indelicate in a way that had the nerve to be pretty. The back of the drape rail held the faintest smear at a height I could measure against a known back. On the carpet where the corridor meets the sweet threshold, a bobby pin lay like punctuation. Not Ivy's tortoiseshell, a cheap silver trying near success. I found the other man's name on a seating plan. We were hosting a supper series in the observation car featuring a chef whose surname sold rooms. The accompanying photographer had opinions and followers. Leon March. His feed made things look honest and glossier than forgiveness. Ivy had used him before for a client who wanted their hotel to resemble a memory of better mistakes. He was handsome at a distance and polite up close, two of the lazier sins. I met him in the optics of the lounge when I went to tell the pianist he was allowed to get away with more. March extended his hand with professional warmth and the exact amount of pressure accomplished men calculate for other men. You're the conductor of everything that isn't music, he said, smiling at his own line. On this run, even the music obeys housekeeping, I said. He laughed, filed it for later, and looked past me at a reflection I had no right to own. In our kitchen at home, Ivy told me without asking my permission to. I used the word I asked for, she said. I didn't keep to the sanctuary. That part was wrong. I won't step over that rope again. She held my face like someone weighing the right salt. I'm not sorry there is more inside me. I am sorry it reached for you where you work. What do you want me to do with my hands? I asked. Because men like me ask practical questions when our insides don't know the right scale. Keep them, she said. On the rail when it needs you. On me when you want me. Not on the past unless you're sanding it smoother. We lasted another month, which is 5 runs, which is 400 white tablecloths, 12 minor crises, and 1 hurricane tasting menu. We slept sometimes like choreography that remembered its music. We kissed like treaties. We laughed out of habit and mercy. Nothing broke until the night I found powder glowing on the private elevator handrail that had never belonged to guests. The smear had the hubris of a birthmark. We separated without giving any neighbor a story. Ivy found a place near the park with windows you had to bow to. She kept the kettle that complains before it sings. I kept the chipped mug that forgives my hour. We divided a life like competent thieves and hugged at the curb like diplomats. Hate me clean if you have to, she said. If I let you go better than I held you, it's not because there wasn't enough. It's because there was different. The Aurelia and I made peace. Maybe my pulse stopped trying to do 2 jobs. B7 stopped showing off. The oven learned manners. The vibe sensor read-only hummed flats and slippers. On a quiet run, an envelope arrived in my tray with no return. A square of black cardstock embossed with an eye and 2 impeccable operations. March's handwriting was expensive. I slid the card into the shredder because some gratitude is a trap that smells like bergamot. Kaya came into focus the way clarity does, without permission, without applause. She's our locomotive engineer with a license that might as well be a crown. If you've ever felt a train lean into a curve like it trusts the future, thank a woman like her. She wears her hair braided like a line that remembers its purpose. Her hands could convince steel to confess. She says little and listens to everything. When she laughs, the horn would soften if it could. We met properly in the vestibule between cars, where the world becomes a strip of wind and metal that belongs to no one. A pressure alarm had been flirtatious. I headed forward with my radio, and there she was, boots braced, back against the handrail, checking a gauge with 2 fingers and a hum. She wants less effort and more grace, she said without looking up. The train or me? I asked. Yes, she said, not unkindly, and turned the tiniest thing the tiniest degree. The line on my tablet steadied like a heartbeat finding a chair. Later, in the tiny office behind the galley that smells like cinnamon and schedules, we compared notes with bodies closer than notes warrant. She studied me the way drivers study fog, honestly, without romance, ready to brake or accelerate. I remember the first time I brushed my mouth against the top of her shoulder where it becomes neck. She made the quietest sound, as if a gear found the right tooth at last. She keeps her eyes open when she shivers, not suspicious, just greedy not to miss the frame. I set my palm on the warm hollow at the base of her throat and felt breath practice being voice. We stopped before we called it anything out loud. The train was moving. Work was a third person in the room. With Kaya, precision became erotic. She warmed to my hand when it rested on her wrist, thumb steady over pulse. She liked to perch on the edge of the desk, the paperwork under her behaving, and climb into my lap like a study in necessary weight. I liked holding the back of her head like I was guiding a thought. We wrote our own treaty without butcher paper. No cameras, no guest areas, no doors cheating at latches. Kitchens after hours and the dark side of the baggage car where the air tastes of canvas and stories. Our bodies practice consent like craft, touch as instruction, pause as punctuation, yes as the quietest word that still has a spine. If this wants to turn into revenge, I don't have the reel. I could have ended March's feed with a drive full of correct angles and a leak to an account that spells morality with many vowels. I could have delivered printouts to donors who like their philanthropy paired with scandal. The Aurelia keeps secrets for a living. My oath is to the weight-bearing parts. Kaya wouldn't want me to weaponize torque for a personal war. She wants me to get her a clean signal when she asks for it, and to bring her coffee that tastes like forgiveness when I can. That's our liturgy. Ivy and I became survivable. She stayed on the contract because the Aurelia isn't petty and neither am I. We texted like border towns with dull customs officers. She sent a picture of Basil bullying a windowsill. I sent a shot of fresh polished brass smiling at its own manners. She wrote, "Proud of you," and in her language it isn't a benediction or a trophy. It's an observation with kindness in it. The train carried lives because that's what it's built for. A man proposed in the observation car and cried like a child because she said yes without reading the menu. A widow took the journey alone because she always wanted to and didn't know how to start. A small boy pressed his face to the glass and shouted every cow like a prayer. The chef broke up with his ego and put it back together with butter. The steward from Coach kissed the sommelier from First in the pantry with the door mostly closed. I learned which screws on the espresso machine needed encouragement and which accepted bribes. I learned where Kaya keeps her patience and how to ask for it. I still wake sometimes, not because a system pings me, but because the body has a timetable. If I'm home, the hum of our refrigerator sounds like track noise played at domestic volume. If Kaya's leg is hooked over me, a bracket better than grammar, I slide my hand along her shoulder to that hollow where breath becomes sentence. She doesn't wake, she approves. The difference between ending and completion is temperature, the palm knows. I didn't when I married. I learned when rails taught me. Months after the powder retired, the Aurelia hosted a charity gala that dressed us up in borrowed virtue. I wore black. The train gleamed. Under a chandelier that wanted to be a galaxy, Ivy and I ended up leaning on the same brass. Her hair was shorter and in a better mood. "Is she kind?" she asked, not using Kaya's name because good exes guard small fires. "She's specific," I said. "Specificity is kindness wearing a tool belt." "Be good to each other," Ivy said. I asked if she was letting mourning into rooms that didn't belong to her, and she said she was trying. It looked true. We clinked water glasses. That drink never lies. Across the car, March was doing what he was built to do, observing, flirting with light. He laughed politely at a donor's joke, and the room forgave him for anything he hadn't done yet. He could have the angle, I had the root. The Aurelia keeps being herself. A wheelset will whine for reasons that aren't physics and will coax it like a child who wants to stay at the park. The linen supplier will send napkins hemmed like a scandal, and I'll choose mercy over emails. A couple will slam a door because honesty at speed is hard. I'll smooth it literally and knock later with tea. I run my hand along the paneling, sometimes the way you stroke a dog who earned its treat. All secure, I tell the radio, which is really telling my chest. Doors compliant, systems good. The hum that answers is an animal that loves me back. When I go home now, the kettle complains in a voice I recognize, different kettle, same theater. Kaya leaves a coil of orange earplugs on the counter like punctuation. I drink coffee from the chipped mug and taste something that isn't victory and isn't loss. In our bed, the one that's ours because we keep doing the maintenance. We do what all good operators do. We stabilize before we attempt repairs. We test before we touch. We keep records, not grudges. I put my hand where a voice begins and listen to a future warm itself. If you want a moral, don't ask the tracks. They prefer timetables to sermons. I can offer the rule I give new attendants who think the job is carrying trays. You're here to carry weight. Sometimes that's luggage, sometimes it's soup, Sometimes it's a stranger's story that wants a seat. Sometimes it's the part of yourself that wanted a door and chose a window. You put your shoulder where the structure needs it and your palm where breath becomes language. And if a sweet you flagged once glows under a blacklight again, you decide whether to print the footage or put the powder back in its drawer and call it a night. I choose the drawer. The train moves. We pour another coffee for whoever needs it. We greet the next signal like a promise. We make the bed. We keep the treaty we wrote with skin and good sense. We mind the doors. And when the long curve carries us around and the light in the corridor chooses to be kind, I think about a compartment that belongs to two by design and to one by promise, and I keep doing the only honest thing I know. I carry what I said I would.